And then, so I'm not interested in politics. Okay, I don't do anything in politics because I got my head down, right? The financial crisis, candidate Fitzgerald is great in the financial crisis.
Had you ever donated to candidates at all, or not?
Yeah, New York candidates.
Okay.
Right, New York candidates. So think about it. You're in New York. You try to pick social liberals, fiscal conservatives.
Right.
If that even exists anymore.
Yeah.
Right, but if you're in New York, you have to pick. And look, I grew up in New York, so I'm socially liberal. What else could I possibly be?
Yeah.
So, so early when Chuck Schumer was young, before he became what the president now calls a Palestinian, he,
Did he really?
I raised him, I raised him money and gave him money.
Yeah.
Donald Trump gave him money.
Same,
right?
I did too.
Yeah, I mean, because he was, that's what he said he was. He was social liberal, fiscal conservative.
Yeah.
And so we'd all give to those kind of candidates, but mostly giving to get along.
Right.
And to be able to, ask him a question if you needed to ask him a question. But there was really I had no drive in that. Like I said, the first 4 nights I slept in Washington in the last 20 years were when Donald Trump was elected. I had never slept there. I'd come down, visit a little, go home. What am I staying here for? So he calls me at the end of October 23.
Okay.
So he's already had his first term. You didn't support or get involved?
No, so I gave him money and I gave Hillary money.
You gave Hillary money in the first term?
Yeah, because Hillary was incredibly helpful to me post 9/11. Remember, she was a senator.
Right.
And New York needed help.
Right.
And Hillary was incredibly helpful. And I was driving the team to help New York rebuild because I had relationships with a whole bunch of congressmen and they were going to do nice things. Like Bill Young ran House Appropriations.
Right.
Bill Young was my friend through a whole variety of things that had to do with, I used to go to Bethesda Naval Hospital and I used to walk around and I would bring music there for the men who got hurt from the military who were in Bethesda Naval Hospital. And we would walk around, I'd go with my wife, and then I would engage the young man with music. I'd give him music and ask him what CDs he wanted. This is when CDs were there, and I'd bring him a Walkman. And my wife would pull the family outside. And she'd pay a year of their mortgage and all their expenses. Because what people don't realize is your son loses his leg, right? Dad and mom come flying in and they're gonna stay by his bedside. What job do these people have that allows them to be at their son's world? And their world is falling apart because their son lost his leg. So their world is falling apart. But at home, their world is falling apart.
Falling apart, yeah.
And so my wife would just try to figure out how much money it was and just give him a check.
Yeah.
And no form, no nothing. Just give him the money.
Yeah.
And help him. So I would bump into Bill Young and his wife, they ran then defense appropriations and they were there just being good human beings. And so we became friends. And he said to me once, he said, is there anything I could ever do to help you? I'm like, look, you're like a congressman from Florida who does defense appropriations. And I'm like a Jewish guy from New York who's in finance. If there ever were 2 skews that were never gonna meet, this is 2 ships going, right? We got nothing. So I said to him, look, we're just gonna be friends, right? We're never gonna do anything. And then he runs House Appropriations. And so when New York needs money to rebuild after 9/11, they go see Bill Young to try to get a bill passed.
Right.
And he said, how can you come see me without Howard?
Yeah.
This is post 9/11. So I'm running New York and Hillary does a really nice job for New York.
Yeah.
And I told DJT, I call him DJT because I've known him for always. I told him that I can't forget.
Yeah.
I'm just not the person who's going to forget. Of course I gave him money, right? But I gave it, and by the way, he still tortures me for it. So and you know what the best part is?
As a good friend does.
Yes.
Right. But you know what the point is? See, other people would sort of curl back.
Yeah.
Right. So here, right after he gets elected, here's a story for you. So right after he gets elected, he has a dinner in New York. Right? So he invites me to the dinner in New York because I'm his friend. And then while he's giving his talk to his first dinner in New York, he goes, wait, Hillary's supporter. And he points at me, right? So I stand up, I go, hey, everyone. And I sit down. He's just sassing me, okay? Because I gave him tons of dough. He knows I love him, and it's fine.
Okay, so we're 2023.
So we're 2023. And he calls me. And he says, will you help me?
Yeah.
And I had not thought politics. Now, I gave him money in 2020 re-election.
Yeah.
Probably gave him $10 million. I raised him $15 million. So I was, once I'm on his side the whole way through. I'm raising him money in 17, 18, 19, 20. While he's president, I'm totally on his side.
Yeah.
But I'm just his friend. I'm not engaged.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm still rebuilding my life.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 2023 calls me, says, will you help me? And I actually thought about it. And that was the first time I really thought politics. And then I said, yes. And I gave him $10 million right then and there. And then I started talking to him. I started going on the campaign trail. I started doing research. I started doing knowledge. I talked to him about everything. I talked to him all the time about everything.
Did you love it? Because our friend Sachs, we were talking at dinner last night. He seems to love it.
There's nothing not to love. As Donald Trump says, this is 1,000 Super Bowls for him. Yeah. And for me, it's only 100 Super Bowls.
Right.
I mean, if you're dedicated to America and you're willing to wear America's clothing and to stop worrying about yourself and only care about America.
Yeah.
And have no objective post.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The president hates when these people have, they raise money post from people they met in here. So I'm never going to work again. Okay. I'm never going to work. This is all I care about. I'm just going to help America. So he asked me to help him. And I start thinking about it. I start studying everything and I read everything and I read everything about the White House and I read everything about everything I can possibly read because I'm just that way. Mm-hmm. And then I start helping him.
Yeah.
Right. And I went to learn how he picked the judges, right, in the Supreme Court and why it did and that. And I'm just very detailed. And so I started studying what transition is.
Right.
Right. And I started studying it and I started studying tariffs. Because he wanted to talk about tariffs. And he's always thought the trade deficit was wrong and basically a ripoff of America. And I started studying everything about it.
Yeah.
And so he and I would talk about it and we knew everything about it. And then he picked me to run transition.
Okay, so we're going to talk about tariffs in a sec, but so double click into transition. What did you find that was so interesting?
I'll give you an example. So there's a book called The Gatekeepers that was written. And people gave me, you should read this book. And it's about chiefs of staff.
Okay.
And basically, there's another way to call it. It's called the jerks, right? Because what they do, imagine you're the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
You're the gatekeeper of what?
Yeah.
Of the man who was elected president of the United States of America. He needs the gates kept from him. And if you listen to the Nixon tapes, you hear him scheming to try to learn anything. Because what happens is the chief of staff, everybody reports to the chief of staff and the chief of staff reports to you. So you can't get on Air Force One without asking the chief of staff. Mm-hmm. You can't get a document unless you have the chief of staff. No one can come see you unless you have the chief of staff. And if they take your phone away, you know what you are? You're imprisoned. And that's the gatekeepers. So I said to Donald Trump, I said, look, you fired Reince Priebus, who was your chief of staff. Then you fired John Kelly, who was the chief of staff. Then you fired Mick Mulvaney as the chief of staff. Then you would have fired Meadows, but you didn't get a chance because the next election. So I said, why don't you fire the job? What you need is a chief of staff who's actually a chief of staff, not who's the gatekeeper.
Right.
Right. And so that was an example of how I changed it. And so Susie Wiles is perfect for Donald Trump. You know why? She lets him be him. John Kelly took away his phone.
Right.
So he couldn't communicate with anybody.
Oh, wow.
Whereas Susie embraces who he is, helped him get elected, ran a great campaign.
Yeah.
She's perfect for him in this role. And so that's what I brought. So I brought an understanding of him,
right,
and an understanding of the role.
Right.
And that's why I convinced your friend David Sachs every time he said, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I would call him and say, it's an emergency. I need to see you. He'd fly in and go, what is it? I go, you need to join the administration. He goes, that's what the emergency was? I go, of course.
And was
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.